I want to have fun. The goal with Final Fantasy for me is to experience the story. It's not to struggle in raiding and dungeons. Hello and welcome to this video. So, as you may have seen in my last two videos, I am trying Tank. I thought this was a good idea for us to see. I have already watched Joe Cat's DPS, a crappy guide to DPSing, I think it was. And I'm also going to watch Healer and Tank, but I thought this one was a good idea to start out with. Do you want to be a tank in Final Fantasy? I'm not sure. Let's get into it and see if I do.
Hello, Tony here. This marks the start of my Hall of the Novice series, and today we'll be talking about the tank role. In this episode, we'll be covering the in-game Hall of the Novice's tank advice, what's good, what's not so good,
bad and
what's
the
irrelevant.
ugly.
Then we'll go over some best practices to ease you into the tank role yourself.
Okay.
Let's start by talking about the advice given by the in-game
Hall
of the Novice tank regimen. And while we do so, I'll explain some of the acronyms and jargon used both in-game and by the community at large.
Okay.
First, dodge telegraphed attacks. If you do exercise one in-game, it does a pretty good job of showing you what these are. I have some B-roll up if you're watching and want a refresher, or if you haven't done the exercise yet. Also, I promised to explain jargon, so here it is.
I haven't done it.
A telegraph is a visual indicator showing you where an attack is going to land. Second, use combinations to build enmity on a single target. Ooh boy, we're only on number 2, and things are about to go off the rails. First off, the face value advice is sound enough on its own. Please use your skill combos. Some of your actions will have the phrase combo action in their tooltip. If you use that skill immediately after the action named, it will be more effective. So when fighting a single target, do your single target combo in the correct order to do more damage and generate more enmity. And that is our second bit of jargon, by the way. Enmity. It's a numerical measure of how much an enemy hates you. You can't see the actual value, but you can see in the enemy list which enemies you top of the chart on, which enemies you are close or almost top of the chart on, and which enemies don't think of you. Okay,
this is going a little fast for me. I haven't done this yet, so I'm not sure if that's... The first one I knew. You know, the dodge the light on the ground. Use combinations to build enmity on a single target. Enmity, a numerical measure of how much your enemy hates you. Okay. Almost top enmity on this enemy. So is it... I'm going to use World of Warcraft terms, I guess. Is it how much aggro I have? And I see that from this. But where is this? Is it this?
Was a threat. You can also see a gauge for your current target next to each member of your party in the party list, including the position on the enmity table for each party member. Third,
so confused.
Turn your tank stance on before every battle.
If you're more than welcome to tell me in the comments, because I'm not sure I quite understood that. Where did I see this? Okay, so this I understood because I have the number 1 and number 2 with the heavy. You know, the first one I understand that. And then I do the next one because it's activating, so it will be stronger. And I can also click Berserk, because if I click Berserk, then I will have 100% critical hit, right? I understand that. I'm really trying to understand this. And is it these ones?
Fighting a single target, do your single target combo in the correct order to do more damage and generate more enmity. And that is our second bit of jargon, by the way. Enmity. It's a numerical measure of how much an enemy hates
aggro.
You. You can't see the actual value, but you can see in the enemy list which enemies you top of the chart on, which enemies you are close or almost top of the chart on, and which enemies don't think of you as a threat. You can also see a gauge for your current target next to each member of your party in the party list.
I'm not sure I understand what he's saying. It means 2 to 8 are the remaining position. The small gouge at the bottom of each class icon shows the exact value. So this one. Am I correct? You cannot see it! Oh no. How are you supposed to help me if you cannot see it? So this one. Is the bar the one? Or is the number the one? The numbers makes no sense. The smaller the gouge. So this is very small. This is very high. Is it true? So this one is very high. This one is very small. I hope it is. I guess we will learn.
Including the position on the enmity table for each party member. Third, turn your tank stance on before every battle. The in-game trainer will use the name of the ability that your class or job calls its tank stance. They're up in the corner if you want to take a quick
Oh, there it is!
Your tank...
I know, this is mine! Defiance! Okay. Please tell me what it is.
Multiplies the amount of enmity you get from all of your other actions.
Okay, so if I put this on, it multiplies the aggro I will get, right?
As long as it is on. So, yeah, turn it on before every fight. Fourth, get enmity off your allies. This is your job. Your job is to control enmity. Do your job. I mean, this is technically true and valid advice, but it's also kind of empty of meaning, considering that it is literally piece of advice, do your job. Fifth, use your AoE attacks to hit groups of enemies. Some solid basic advice here. Still, a little explainer. AoE is an acronym for area of effect. At level 15, every tank has access to at least one AoE attack. Names and icons are on the screen here, so pause if you want to take a longer look before we move on. Sixth, position yourself to hit every enemy with your AoE attacks. I mean, the more enemies you hit with an attack, the more damage you deal, the faster the fight ends. Still, don't ignore telegraphs to do more damage. Just get...
Okay. So I should do my overpower I get in 2 levels. Should that be my first spell then? Or should I know if I only battle one? Will it make any difference? Can it just be my number 1 spell and I just... and then I hit whatever I hit? Oh, that's confusing. Let's see.
That your single target rotation is your combinations, but if you took that away from that, I'm sorry, it is more damage. Just get as many as you can. Seventh, start using combinations after securing enmity. This right here is the thing.
Okay, is enmity, is it aggro? I will tell myself it is. Or else I don't understand this.
That leads to problems.
So he's saying start using combinations, so my rotation, right? So I could use my rotation when I have the aggro, so when they are all going towards me, I should do my rotation, right? So berserk, this and that, AoE.
Leading back to piece of advice number 2. Back in exercise 2, the trainer implies that your single target rotation is your combinations. But if you took that away from that, I'm sorry, it is just wrong. Quick definition here. A rotation is a series of actions that you perform repeatedly to maximize your and your team's damage done. So a single target rotation is based on your single target attacks, and an AoE rotation is based on your AoE attacks. Please use the one that makes the most sense for the situation you are currently in. If you're attacking more than one enemy, please use AoE. 8.
Okay. That makes sense.
Switch up your tactics based on the situation. I mean, that sounds good, but how, though?
Yeah.
I'll touch on this a little bit in my best practices session, but this is basically just empty advice that is tautologically correct. 9.
The woman was too stunned to speak.
Using your ranged attack. No, there is exactly.
Is this made for beginners? Because I'm sitting here, like, Switch up your tactics based on the situation. Like, I agree. But how?
Best practices session, but this is basically just empty advice that is tautologically correct. Ninth, pull small groups of enemies using your ranged attack. No, there is exactly one room in one optional dungeon where doing this is not a complete waste of time. Basically, never do this unless you know you are in that particular dungeon in that particular room. 10th, avoid pulling.
No, then do what then? What do you mean? Pull small groups of enemies using a ranged attack. Why not? So what should I do instead? Should I just use my melee attack? Should I pull big groups? What should I do then instead? I'm getting nervous. Oh no.
This unless you know you are in something of a bad idea most of the time. 10th, avoid pulling more than one group of enemies at a time. Oof. This is also something of a bad idea most of the time. Sometimes you're going to be forced to fight one group or even a single enemy, and they're not a boss. The rest of the time, you should be pulling at least 2 groups at a time, and frequently you'll be asked and encouraged to do something called a wall pull, where you go and gather every enemy that is available.
But what if we aren't strong enough? Then what? Pull the act of causing an enemy, a group of enemies to start attacking you. Yes. Double or triple. Pull, grabbing the number of enemy groups referred to. So twice for double, 3 for wall pull. The act of pulling every enemy in the area and using AoE rotations to kill them all. What if I'm not strong enough? Oh no. Is it not my duty to be strong enough?
Available between where you are and a piece of geometry that stops you from going forward or literally just before the next boss. As a general rule, as a novice, if the group of enemies you've just pulled has 3 or fewer enemies, go ahead and grab the next group after it too. That way your team can use your AoE attacks to kill more than one group at a time and just pick up the pace just a little bit. 11th, use your AoE.
I don't want to. I'm not comfortable with picking up the pace. Oh no.
Rotation once a group reaches you to secure Enmity. Yes, and do this. Whether the group came from a
use your AoE rotation once a group reaches you to secure aggro.
Ranged attack
Enmity.
pull, your teammates pulling Enmity and dragging their enemies to you, or just mid-fight reinforcements. Use your AoE to secure Enmity once they're in range. And generally, just, finish off the group of reinforcements using your AoE
Tomahawk,
attacks
yeah,
before
I saw
switching
that
back to
one.
target. And 12th, when reinforcements arrive, use your ranged attack to grab their enmity, then your AoE attack to secure it. Also good advice. However, I would add using provoke instead of your ranged attack for a single enemy, and use your ranged attack if there's more than one enemy, or if provoke is already on cooldown for whatever reason. Alright, we've gone through the advice given to new tanks in game through the Hall of the Novice. Explained how each piece of advice is good or not. Now it's time to talk about best practices and how you can become a more skilled and confident tank player. So I've got a few best practices categories here. First up, minimize incoming damage. This is your most important bread and butter of being a player of the game, never mind just a tank. So number 1, dodge telegraphed attacks. That's the first piece of advice the in-game trainer gives you. That's the first piece of advice I'm going to give you because it is that important. If you went through exercise 1, you have seen some of the basic telegraphs that the game uses. These orange lines, circles, and cones. Don't stand in the bad. It's the bad. The second piece of advice
I understand.
is a little bit different here. Bait telegraphed or cleaving attacks away from your team. So, quick definition, a cleaving attack is an untelegraphed attack that just hits an area in front of the enemy in the direction
Cleave, an attack that is not telegraphed, but still hits in an AoE in front of the enemy.
of the person it's attacking. So, for instance, if you have a boss and they have an auto attack where they swing their sword in a cone in front of them, it may not be telegraphed, but it may be hitting everyone in front of the boss. So you want to make sure that you point the boss or the enemies in general just away from the rest of your team. So don't go stand in the center of a pack of enemies where they're in a circle around you, where it's really easy for you to hit them all with your AoE attack. Instead, go through that circle and make it a cone in front of you. That way, if they have frontal cones or lines, your team doesn't have to deal with as many of these telegraphs and can just focus on their own AoE attacks to take.
Okay. I think I understand this one. Let's say that there was 7 dodos around us, and you saw how it just had this little thing on the floor. So what he's saying is, I could pull the dodos with my AoE, and the dodos would gather around me in a circle, and then we would have these crisscross all over the way. What he's asking me to do is to go through them, so they only crisscross like towards me, because I have the aggro, and then my team would be standing behind it, right? Right? I think.
The enemy group down faster. Next up, use mitigation skills frequently in order to minimize the damage you take. A special note, you will eventually get a roll skill called Arm's Length. The slow that it applies to enemies is an attack speed slow, so it is a mitigation skill, so please use it, especially on large packs of trash mobs. And next up, we just mentioned them,
I don't know why, I just have a hard time understanding things today.
Next up, use mitigation skills frequently in order to minimize the damage you take. A special note, you will eventually get a roll skill called Arm's Length. The slow that it applies to enemies is an attack speed slow, so it is a mitigation skill, so please use it, especially on large packs of trash mobs. And
okay, so I will get it. So let's say I have to do something with a big enemy. If I like spell it away, cast it on the big boy, he will be slower to cast his spells, which is good for the team. So instead of 1 second, it will probably be 4 seconds. So we have 3 seconds. Makes sense.
And next up, we just mentioned them, but use mitigation skills against trash mobs, especially when pulling more than one group. In general, trash mobs, when pulled in large groups, are more dangerous than bosses in dungeons, because bosses in dungeons are not designed to require the use of your mitigation skills. Whereas if you were to pull every monster from the start of the dungeon to the first boss, or the first boss to the second boss, etc. The game is not designed for you to be able to trivially kill that group of monsters, so you will have to use mitigation skills in order to survive. Next up, use Interject and Low Blow. First up, Low Blow. It is an ability that stuns an enemy for a few seconds. Early on in the game, you can use this against bosses to stop them from casting things, or just take the heat off for a few seconds. And later on, you may run into trash mobs that have particularly dangerous attacks that you just want to pause for a few seconds to give everyone a little bit more time to deal with the rest of the pull. So just keep Low Blow on cooldown. And as for Interject, it works in much the same way as low blow, except there are only highly specific skills you can interrupt with interject. If you look at the B-roll now, you'll see footage of how you can tell whether or not a skill is interjectable. If you see the red shaky cast bar, it's something you can use interject to interrupt. And generally, you basically always...
I think I have a hard time understanding these because I don't have the spells yet, so I haven't had them in my hand to actually do, you know. So when he says something, interject. I don't know if I have that one yet. Oh, I'm beginning to get nervous. This tank thing might not be for me.
Should, unless you know that the particular enemy you're fighting has multiple skills that you can interject, and only one of them is super dangerous. And finally, this piece of advice is going to go counter to everything that I've just said.
Is interjecting the same as the one in WoW when I, you know, the enemy casts a spell and I do so they can't interrupt? Is interject the same as interrupt?
But do not use the tank limit break unless it is absolutely required to continue a fight. The tank limit break is mitigation and it lasts for several seconds and it is quite powerful. However, the healer and DPS limit breaks are generally more valuable to your team unless the tank limit break is called for by the game telling you to transcend your limits while a big attack is charging up by an enemy who you cannot kill. If you see that, then you're gonna have to time the limit break so that the duration lasts until the attack deals damage to your team. So good luck with that the first.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is we have something called Bloodlust if you play Horde, and we have something called Heroism if you play on the Alliance. And that's what I understand in Limit Break as. It's something you can click and then everyone all of a sudden gets so much stronger. He's telling me that DPS, healer, and tank doesn't have the same ones. And as a tank, it's not my limit break I should click. It's the other ones. Okay, so the other ones will click. What will it hurt if I do? I'm not quite sure. What will it hurt if I use my limit break? Wouldn't it? Why not use it? Huh?
First time you ever see it, but it does happen, so you do need limit break on your bar. Just in general, you need to not use it. Alright, now the second category is prioritize controlling enemies. So first up, use your AoE rotation whenever you are fighting 2 or more enemies. Now, I know some people out there are going to be like, but my single target rotation does more DPS on 2 enemies or 3 enemies. To which my response is, yes, but doing the most DPS is not your job. Controlling the enemies is. And by using your AoE rotation whenever there are 2...
So, let me think. So you know how I'm not that far in the game. I think right now for me, the difficult thing for me is I've always only played DPS. I tried healer for a short period of time in WoW. So I very much have DPS mindset. I also know that there's a difference between doing the story, doing PvE, and doing PvP. You know, when he says that's not your job, controlling the enemies is. I'm watching this as I'm still doing the story, I'm going around the world, trying to level. So a PvE perspective. So I'm thinking solo, which when he says that's not your job, I'm sitting here like, but who else is going to do it? My little Marlene. But I guess this is very much like we are in a group now. My role is not to do damage. It's because he's in the open world, then I get confused. if it was a dungeon or something. But then again, I don't want spoilers either. But yes, so it's my role together with other people. It's not doing DPS. It's pulling so DPS can do the DPS, which I agree on. I just think it's still a little tough for me because I don't have that tank mindset. I haven't tanked yet, really. You have watched me. I don't know if it was early for me to watch this, so I'm just not understanding anything, or if I'm just, I'm confused. But I think I understand things.
More enemies, you are basically guaranteeing that no matter what your DPS gets up to, you will keep control of those enemies. So just do it. Just make your life easier and do it. If you're in a pre-made and in voice chat and you're calling targets, okay, fine, you do you, speed run away. But in general, just AoE everything if you're in a duty finder group. That way things will just go that much smoother for everybody, including yourself. Second up,
He really makes it sound like, and you please correct me if I'm wrong, because this is going to be actually pretty important for me. So we are in a group. The team teams up. We have 3 DPS, 1 healer, and we have me as a tank. He makes it sound like me going through the story, that if I do not do this the best I absolutely can, keep aggro, kiting them around, doing all of these things, if I don't do that and I don't pull the right spells, y'all are gonna die. We cannot have that. That's not what we're doing. I cannot have a role in this with me being able to screw it all up if I don't do it correctly. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be stuck on a dungeon for, 5 recordings. You know what I mean? If you haven't noticed either, I'm really not that happy about doing dungeons or raids. I haven't tried raids yet, but I can only imagine. I want to do the story. I'm here for that. And as being stuck at a raid or a dungeon is really not something I'm interested in. To be honest, if you really think that being a tank would come in my way as a content creator, I would really, really encourage you to tell me, because then I don't think I will spend my time doing tanking or healing on like this. I will experiment with that in my own time then, and then we will continue with DPS. Yes, that's what I want to say.
Use Provoke to grab enemies who are out of range and targeting someone else. And if Provoke is on cooldown or you need to hit more than one ad, use your ranged attack as well. I'll add on a third piece of advice here. If there's a big group of enemies going after one person, go run and stand on top of that person and use your AoE rotation as soon as the group is in range, instead of trying to pick out like 5 enemies and hit them each with an individual ranged attack.
Yeah.
It'll just go much faster. And then
I
finally,
agree.
if your teammates pull more enemies, just go to them and get all of the enemies under control. For the record here, you're not the leader of the party. Pulling is not the tank's job, so just go ahead and get everything under control. If, for whatever reason, your team can't handle as many enemies as they decided to pull, well, that's not your fault, as long as you genuinely tried your best.
Okay, I have a little thought on this. Being the tank does not make you the leader, nor is pulling enemies strictly a tank role job. So, I don't know about Final Fantasy, but I do know a lot about WoW. In my opinion and from my experience, the tank having a leading role is oftentimes the best. You always need a leader in a group effort. I don't know how to say that. If you're in a group and you have to do something, it's good to have a person who calls the shots, so you don't sit there and don't know what to do. But no, you shouldn't abuse your power as a tank. That's what I'm trying to say. You shouldn't abuse it. But in my opinion, I always let the tank pull, the healers heal, and then I just do damage. You know, this is actually helping me, yeah,
On the
quite
other
a lot.
hand, you've decided to become a you pull, you tank? Well, there is a special place in GM jail for people like that. I recommend you don't get yourself there. And then my final category of advice for today
Don't
is gonna
abuse
contradict
it.
something I literally just said not even 5 minutes ago. Do more damage. You'll gain a lot of actions as you level up. Read the tooltips and try to use them all as often as possible. So always be casting. Weapon skills and spells trigger a cooldown for every weapon skill and spell on your bar, called the global cooldown, or the GCD for short. Do your best to ensure that every time your GCD comes up, you instantly use a weapon skill or spell and get it going again. This typically means to start mashing your next spell when you have between a quarter and a half of your GCD remaining. And then, next piece of advice, weave your abilities. Abilities can be used while the GCD is still counting down. However, every action causes something called animation lock, which lasts about 0.7 seconds. This means that you can use
I'm hungry. Okay, I had a little snack. Let's continue.
at most 2 abilities between each GCD, and only 1 if you use something with a cast time of 1.5 seconds. For you tanks out there, this basically means paladins. If you're casting Clemency, Holy Spirit, or Holy Circle, you can weave 1 additional ability before your next GCD comes up. Every other tank does not have cast time skills, unless you're using a duty action or you're using an item, but those are things that don't come up too terribly often, so generally it is just a paladin thing to keep in mind. And finally, use your damage buffs the instant they come off cooldown. Getting more uses of each damage cooldown is more important than waiting to line things up in general. This is all basic novice advice. Using all of your abilities will get you about 80% of the way to optimize DPS, and then from there a few small tweaks will get you 95% or more of the way there. It's only the last 1 to 5% that gets really difficult and fight specific to optimize, so don't feel too bad as long as you are remembering to use all of your abilities on cooldown as often as you can. Alright, that covers everything I want to cover in a Hollow the Novice tutorial video for tanks. If you have any questions or you need anything clarified, go ahead and drop a comment below. I'll do my best to answer every single one. I made a whole video. If you found this video informative, helpful, or entertaining, drop me a like and subscribe. If you found this video boring, worthless, or pointless, smash that dislike button and tell me why in the comments below. In any case, thank you for watching. Take care of yourself. Have a great day.
You too. Okay, so here is his channel. Please go leave him a like and maybe subscribe if you enjoyed it. I think it was a pretty informative video. I really liked the video. Was I confused? Yes. Am I totally new to the game and to this tanking? Yes, so I guess it was expected. I really liked it. You can tell he has put a lot of effort into it. And yeah, so my overall thoughts is, let me go big. Okay, so my overall thoughts is, to be honest, and I know I shouldn't, like, before I read the comments, take this stand, but from watching this video, I get the feeling that I'm really not ready to be a tank. I don't know. I don't know, as a content creator, that's what I want you to tell me, is if this is going to become a problem, please let me know, because then I won't level the tank. I will just go continue with archering, I think, or barding at this point it is actually. I get the feeling that this is very, like, I need to know my tank down to a T, and I'm not sure I'm going to get that, and I feel like that's a me problem. I want to have fun. The goal with Final Fantasy for me is to experience the story. It's not to struggle in raiding and dungeons. I don't want us to lose. I don't want to do anything making anything hard for any of you. So please let me know if you think I should continue with DPS, and when I get more into the game, maybe like a year down the road, if I'm at a place where, it would be fun, maybe we could do that. But honestly, I think it's a little early in my journey to be messing around with healing and tanking. I like doing it by myself, but as group content, I just had a thought. As group content, because we will hit dungeons and such to continue the story. And group content, I think I do better as a DPS. I like what he said about you being a tank does not equal leadership. Like, you can't abuse that role. It's not, you have to be a kind human being, or, skilled or something to have people listening to you. You are not automatically the group leader just because you're a tank. I totally get that, and I agree. But I think tanking is quite important, and is going to be way more important later in the game, I think. I don't know if you guys would be able to DPS and heal if I'm not doing my tanking job correctly, and that worries me a little. So please let me know what you think. I will continue archering until you see this video, and I will read your guys' comments and hear what you think. Because I rely heavily on your feedback. So yeah, you can be looking forward to MSQing with archery so far, at least. Please go leave a like and maybe a kind comment. Tell him where you came from LilCozyGamer's channel. And yeah, awesome video. Well done. Yes! If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, and if you're new here, subscribe. You stay cozy, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye! Ow.